In this video, we're going to use rational numbers to represent real-world quantities. Our only evidence is that we're going to apply rational numbers to real-world situations. We'll look at a couple of examples, or at least an example. You'll try a you-do. We'll look at the things to remember, and then, of course, suggested practice problems at the end. So let's dive right into it. So in this example, suppose that we have two fish. There's an anglerfish, which is a depth of negative 2,000 meters, and a goblin shark, which is a depth of negative 1,300 meters. We're going to use the greater than and less than symbols to explain their relationship. So, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to think about how these to compare. And we might, if we wanted to, draw a number line. We can draw it by hand and it'll be good enough. It doesn't need to be to scale. We know that usually when we're talking about water, sea level is going to be here, so that'll be 0 meters. And I'm not entirely sure this is perfectly to scale, again, but this will be negative 1,300 meters. This will be negative 2,000 meters. Now, to be fair, this is just going to help us figure out what's going on. It's not necessarily an absolute must, but it's a good place to get started at very least. So, if we think about which one of these is greater, you may be tempted to say that the depth of the anglerfish, this value here, the negative 2,000, is going to be the larger number, because normally 1,300 is going to be less than 2,000. You have to remember, though, that these are negative values. So the greater value, we'll put a greater sign in there for now, is actually going to be the number that is closest to the positive end of our number line. In this case, our negative 1,300 meters is going to be closer to this positive end than negative 2,000. So we can use this relationship, negative 1,300 is greater than negative 2,000, to explain the relationship of the anglerfish and the goblin shark. We could go even further by writing in a sentence. We could write something along the lines of the goblin shark is at a greater value than the anglerfish. Now, when we start talking about absolute values in the next target, then we could say something a little bit different. But for right now, negative 1,300 is going to be greater than negative 2,000. So the next problem that we're going to look at is this you-do. At 10 p.m. one winter night, the temperature was negative 6 degrees. At midnight, the temperature was negative 2 degrees. This is all in Celsius, by the way. You're going to, again, use the less than, greater than, or equal sign to compare the two temperatures and explain their relationship. Ready? Go. So things to remember. They're basically the same things to remember. In fact, this is literally the same slide as from the 2.2 video. Remember that a rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction. In both of the examples we looked at, they were both whole numbers. Remember that they could be fractions, they could be decimals, as long as they repeat or come to an end. They could be positive, they could be negative, it doesn't matter. You can order numbers on a number line from least to greatest. Remember that whatever is the greatest value is going to be closest to the positive end of your number line. That's why in our example that we did, negative 1,300 was greater than negative 2,000. Negative 1,300 is closer to the positive end of the number line. And you can use the less than, greater than, and equals signs to compare numbers. You may still want to write a sentence afterwards explaining exactly what that relationship is, especially if it's a word problem. but you could use the symbols. I'll leave you with some suggested practice problems. These are all from Savas Realize. They're in the 2.2 section, I think, actually. But all three of these problems are going to revolve around the table that you'll see there, with track members and the long jump length relative to state qualifying distance. Give them your best shot. Ready to go.